record. Okay, so moving on. Now I'm gonna do the whole process of cleaning up, making it look beautiful in Illustrator, and see where we are. Before we had the, as I mentioned, the drawings, we extracted the sections and so on, and we generate these drawings. And what we did is like a number of layouts here that we could save as directly, each of them, and generate a PDF. I think we did one of those, some of those are good. You can use a PDF, you can open the PDF directly in Illustrator, which has, is the same scale, and just make sure the paper space of your Illustrator is actually set to the same dimensions, letter size, and those are actually the lines that you can work with. Okay. Now, one thing to notice that there's actually kind of a dummy set of layers. When you do a PDF, you kind of lose those layers. So I'm going to go through another way, and this is a good technique if you clean up the line weights, which is the last thing I was going to talk about. You clean up the line weights in Rhino, which is not an option. You can bring it here to Illustrator, or the PDF directly, you can print it. But I'll do that afterwards. So how we actually bring the number of layers so we can work with it in Illustrator more properly. So I'm going to close that, go back to Rhino. And what we can do is go to the top view directly. And one thing we can do is just select our drawings and just, as we know, export select it to Illustrator and give it a name, like let's say drawings. And I'm going to bring all of them together. Let's call it Biz3. Now, this question that pops up here now, it's important. To preserve the model scale, we should do a 4:1. It's kind of a weird because before it was 1 above, 4 below. So you might be inclined to set 1 here and 4 here. But if you think about it, like the dimension of the model versus what I want to extract from it is a 4:1 ratio. So 4:1 is your thing. Doesn't really matter the RGB. You don't really need the viewport boundaries, so that's fine. And when you set that to OK, it does what we have done many times, but does it to what we needed. We go back to Illustrator. We can say Control-O, open in that drawing. Oops. And why do they come here? They come there because the 0, of Rhino is this point on the bottom left of Illustrator. So be careful with that. Notice how the 0 is over here. It's taking all of this in consideration, and it's going to place it in the drawing in Illustrator all the way there. So you might need to zoom out. That's one option. What I could do is let me export it again or save as again. I'm going to go back here. I can move it towards the center, and I can do the same. Export selected, the same drawing. Okay, just again, make sure 4:1, say okay. Then you can move it out again if you want and go back to Illustrator, Control-O, select the drawing that I override, and then you're going to have them there. Now, what is the scale? If I say 4:1, it's 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. So it works. If we want 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot, this is the way we will go about it. But imagine you need a different scale, like a 1/8. So I'm going to close this guy. I'm going to override it with the 1/8 option. And I'm going to go back to Rhino. I'm going to bring them back here. And I'm going to export selected, Illustrator. And now you might want to start adding like 1/4. By the way, you can use this symbol. So just say 1_4 something, so or 1Q. That the slash doesn't actually work with most of the software files. So you say OK, and now we change that to 8. It's pretty much the same thing. I'm going to move it back so it doesn't interfere with the model, and Control-O, the 1Q, 1/4 opens up, and now we're talking about. So now these are actually drawings that they are as we need them to be. I could organize them, nicely in association. I could actually, work with all of them together, and then I can crop them in InDesign afterwards. Good thing, obviously, about this that we get the layers, so no matter the more layers you generate in Rhino, let's say even the detail of the door, whatever it is, it will appear here. So that's something that you can work with. You can say, well, the walls are going to be what? Well, if you're a boring guy like I am, I will probably place in black and a thickness of 2, for example. I don't know. I probably deselect to see if it's too much, too little, and keep on changing. The walls probably want to be all the way up because it's the thicker one. And then glass, probably something we want to deal with as well. So I'm going to select the entire layer, and I'm going to do 0.5, or I'll keep it in 1. Floor conditions should be also above. I'll select them all. I'm going to say I for match, and I'm going to match the properties of this guy, so it's straightforward, the same. Glass again, the same different color. Let's just do also like a black color. Mullions. I'm going to make them a little bit thinner. Again, I'm going the boring way, but it's what it is. Oftentimes what we need. And the door could be just thinner, no? Can do 0.5 and light gray, for example. Okay. I know that different people like to do the doors in different ways, so you might want to put that in Rhino, and I'll do it right after. So this is a clean plan. Again, it's orthographic drawing. What I could do is start either selecting if you have a closed polyline and do a fill of that. Oh, so I can do a fill. I'm swapping, or what I could do also is just double click here and assign the black fill. Okay, so and I can do all of the walls now, selecting them. I like you. So the fill, all of the floors, I like you. So you start getting that kind of more clean drawing and property scale. Here we can bring, we saw how to get silhouettes of people, so we can do those things. Now this doesn't show any projection, so it's just the simplest type of plan that you can get, but it's good if you want to do a clean abstract plan about it. It's a fantastic way to go about it. Okay. Again, these are because they're close polylines. So if you're not, you're going to use the live paint bucket as we have done. Select the lines so they get together, and then you paint inside of each of the set of lines. So that's only section. What if we want to use the clipping plane? Let me turn on the clipping plane. Let me do a purge first. Get rid of those drawings that I had before. Well, I have this I don't want anymore. The clipping plane should be here. Show. Here it is in that layer. So what I could do is turn on the clipping plane on the top view, because I'm actually cutting at 4 feet more or less. So I can go to the top view and select again everything together with the model and the clipping plane to do a make 2D. No? If I do a make 2D, this little pop-up comes up. You have seen this 1,000 times. And you can get the source layers. You might want, I don't think, hidden lines for this. You definitely want the clipping plane because you want that section there. Now you say, okay, brings out that. Notice that it's the same scale. So you might say, well, this is exactly the same, Professor. No, there's some lines like projected. And if you have other stuff here, you will be seeing everything that is projected on the bottom. So this drawing is much more complete than the other one, okay? So now it will be an issue of selecting that, export selected, AI. I'm gonna do this 3.1Q, that could be drawing number 2 or something. Say save. You wanna work with the scale here. in the same way. If again, if it's a 1/8, it will be those two numbers. If it's a quarter, etc., etc. Okay, go back to this drawing. I could potentially save that, call it D1, this V1, and I could save another one. Okay, well, it's going slow. I think I'm asking too much from the machine. Just a second. Just going to save it out so we can use that same drawing. I'm going to call this number 2. I'm going to move this V, move them out here, and then I'm going to open the other one. And it is it. There you go. Again, they're moved a little bit to the side. So like I can copy and paste as we have done many times. Make sure you have the paste remember layers. And there it is. And then I can go layer by layer, just matching properties. For example, I just select this one, select I, the same as this. There you go. Next, these are actually projected. And I can do this spinner, like the door. I can do the next one, the door. Select all the doors. I to match properties this one. Again, it's just more layers because you have the make to be layers there. So it'll be the same. I match that one. I can do the glass panel. There are several of them. I to match this one. I'm just doing that. You don't have to do it this way. Just matching to make my life easier. The mullion. Is going to be I, like this one. I think I lost something here. It'll be 2. It'll be black. Okay. And layers. And reorganize these things and make to be probably better that they're, that we understand which ones should be where. The clipping planes in intersection, those should be above. No, this was the cuts. If we get rid of that, it's pretty much the same as the plan. And this will be projections. Again, if you have more information, all of that will be appearing. Okay, so one thing we see here is that they're like disconnected, okay? So the intersection, what is being cut, like the wall, is actually like a little chunky here and there, which is kind of funny, So that's something that we need to kind of consider when doing this. In theory, we should be able to join the object's path. So you can say join, and when you join them, basically it's kind of connects all the parts together. That's probably the inconvenience of the make to be as a process. But the good thing is that you get all of the projected materials. So path and join here. Oops, we don't want that. So we have to go one by one. Path and join. Path and join. If you want to fill, which you don't necessarily need. So, okay, so that would be your kind of a more slightly sophisticated plan a bit. So something to consider as an option, to use the make to the process Okay, another interesting thing is if we want a plan or a section perspective, we can actually introduce a clipping plane, select it and rotate it 90 degrees, for example. See, like, what if we want that section here and in perspective? I'm going to maybe move it a little further up. Yeah. How do we get that? Well, the way to get this section or a plan from above is to first go to the view where that is happening. It could be the front. So if you go then to the property, selecting the clipping plane, you can say the front is also cut. And notice how you cut it in the front, because the clipping plane only cuts whatever you tell it to cut, no? Once you have that, what you could do is without selecting anything, you can set the projection to be perspective. And then that could be just to see it a bit better render. Again, if you have material tools, will be looking much better and so on. But I'm just going to explain how do we get that section perspective. And by the way, nobody is doing nicely from Revit, so it's something that Rhino could help much more to do it. No? So again, the step is we are in the front view. We make sure that the clipping plane, by selecting it, is set to the front or right view, depending on where you have the clipping plane. Now, if I do a make 2D of this, it will be the same as the plan with, so you have things projected, but you won't have the perspective. So we do not select anything and we change on the properties panel, the projection to be perspective. You can emphasize the camera lens and to make it a little more kind of effective. Again, you don't want to orbitate, because the second you orbitate is not anymore the section perspective. It's a perspective that is section, but it's not the exact section being perspectival. So if you do that by accident, if you orbitate by accident, you should go back that view to front and then go back here to perspective and keep it there. You can pan if you do shift right click. That this section is actually an orthographic section. So you can do these things, but you can't orbitate because then this is not the section. It's not an orthographic section. It's a three-dimensional section. Okay, so again, always from whatever view you are, change it to perspective. You might want to center by panning. And then file, sorry, I'm going to do a make 2D. And the same, we have a view. What view should it be? The front view. It is the view, maintain source layers, and say OK. We're going to go to the top view, as always, and we're going to export this. And I'm just going to do number 3. So let's say quarter. Go back to Illustrator. It's going to open that new drawing. And there is Control C, you can place it here, Control V. That's your section perspective. Imagine you want it very kind of a prominent here. You don't want this guy, and you want a very, I mean, if you want it scaled, you shouldn't touch it. It's like a 1/8 perspective. But if you want more of a presentation, by the way, if you know that's a 1/4, sorry, 1/8, you can always scale the drawing here by transforming scale and saying 200%. That will give you directly a 1/4. and you don't have to go back and forth. This is a 1/4 um, section. It's orthographic, but it is perspectival. Okay, so again, we're gonna redistribute the clipping planes that are above. All of those drawings, more or less, are as we have always said. It's like they're gonna be the wall probably should be the first one. Select the walls. Let's do it just two. It's good. Make this black. Okay, so that's happening slowly. Good. I'm gonna have the mullions. I'm gonna place them next. Select. I'm gonna make that maybe one in black color. There you go. I'm gonna select floor, which should be up there with the wall. Also two, black color. Nice. And we have the glass. It could be a little thinner. One, again, black or whatever color we need it. And then you have a whole bunch of layers that they're projection, no? Which could be potentially thinner and maybe light grayscale or something. Okay, so these type of drawings are quite nice, I think. Now, what you could do is obviously, I did before, hide everything but the clipping plane and use the live plane bucket to select all of the guys here, like control and select, and then making sure that this is exactly what you want to apply. It's 02, and then fill in black, and then uh, paint each of the elements. So you can paint also the mullions if you want, like paint bucket, paint, paint. And now I can actually bring back the other set of drawings. It's going to look quite powerful. So it's a very simple drawing. It is perfectly orthographic. So this is 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. So it is orthographic. It's not, it's not like approximate or anything. It's precisely the scale that we're dealing with and that we want. But it is perspectival. So it's a very kind of interesting drawing that you could mix perspective and orthographic drawing. Okay. That you can do with the plan. You just put the clipping plane above, you go to the top floor plan, you transform that view into perspective without orbitating. Export selected, 8:1 or 4:1 or whatever scales you're dealing with. You bring it here, you start cleaning up the drawing, etc. If we want the rendering behind kind of idea, this is, you can imagine something that is relatively straightforward. We just need to work with the materiality. So for the materiality, most important things, let me actually delete this thing, this guy. Let me go back to the front view. Perspective. Okay, so we need to assert that, that the materials of each of the objects are the ones we want. So the first is, so we will assign materiality at the material tab in the layers. So it's like each of these circles will represent the materials of each of the objects. So the floor, for example, it's like clicking on that circle, assigning a material by giving it a name, let's say floor, and then what type of material it is. It is paint, whatever it is, or is a plaster, have a plaster option in white. It could be toned down a little bit gray or whatever it is that you need. That would be this. Okay, so that would be a floor. The walls would be different material, let's say walls. And that might be a painting, whatever. So you can start elaborating these things as much as you want. Okay, there it is. Then the door, etc., etc. So you can work out these things. So then you will do the rendering with the right click option. You get to set the rendering setting. And again, we're only keeping it super simple, so it might be better to keep this even in grayscale minimally. I think I assigned a glass one already here, a glass option, which is glass. Um, yeah, that when you set the rendering settings, we talked about this in the previous um, kind of a panel. So we want to make sure we have a decent kind of dimension for the rendering. So the higher the better, but the more time, so you can go to the 3000s and so on. Again, there are like small drawings, so you don't want to go and pop up the resolution of the rendering too much, but not too little. So you might want to stay in the 2000s and so on. You might want to keep this no more than 300, good quality. Um, and we talked about the transparent background, so I think that's still relevant for us. We don't want like a floor condition. It's more of a floating drawing. So I think this makes more sense than anything else. We do have the sun settings, and I'll be talking much more about this in the last phase of the semester, where you can set, um, the solar study to your likings. So you can set the manual control and drag this. You can always say, here in the renderer, have a view of this, how it looks, and then change the sun setting here. And in theory, we should be kind of seeing how the sun comes around. And so there you go. So you might want to test that to see something that is of your interest. No? And again, because these are not meant to be a way of understanding how the sun precisely enters the space. We can do that later on. This is more about the effect that we want to sell in an idea. No? So you may want to do some diagonals and so on and keep that as a nice. And you will hit the render. And it will take some time. And again, it has to be the same exact view. So you might need to save that view so it fits. And then you save it as a PNG. And then you put it behind the line drawing. And that's the story of our lives. Okay. Again, I'm not asking really for real finish, no. I'm not asking for really furniture and so on. That's coming also in the last phase when Enscape will make things very easy for us in that regard, and we will be able to pop in some furniture from different ways, etc., etc. Okay. So that would be the rendering that goes on behind the line drawing. On and on, I think by these two recordings, we have enough tools to generate the orthographic drawings that go to panel 2, that we have enough information to generate the make 2Ds or the three-dimensional drawings of the project, so we can populate top area of panel 2. And the bottom is just simple renderings that we just navigate into the interior that I'll be talking next week about, like simple grayscale, features, understanding light, understanding materiality, patterns, and basic things. Because I'm not asking for realistic things anyway. So I do think that panel two should have some identity. So maybe you want to find identity in color, maybe line color of the glass is whatever, just to put, or the hats of those floors when you cut in section and the walls when you cut in floor plan, they have some peculiarity of your interest, etc., etc. No? So I do recommend that you find some kind of an identity representation in your panel two. Okay? And that's that. Let me cut this thing.